The campaign for Malaysia's Johor state election is entering its final stretch. Polling will take place this Saturday. More than 2.7 million voters are eligible to cast their ballots across 56 state constituencies. Johor is regarded as a Barisan Nasional stronghold. The coalition secured a two-thirds majority in the 2022 state election. It's now seeking a fresh mandate, campaigning on its record in government over the past 4 years. Its main challenger, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's Pakatan Harapan, even though the two coalitions are partners at the federal level unity government. Barisan Nasional, meanwhile, is seeking to strengthen its foothold despite internal tensions among some of its component parties. Several smaller parties and independent candidates are also in the race. All 56 state seats are in the contest, 29 needed to form the next state government. The campaign, largely centred on bread and butter issues such as housing, jobs, cost of living. The outcome is being watched as an early gauge of voter sentiment, with Johor giving an indication for what might happen in the next general election. Well, we have our correspondents Ariffin and Amir Yusof joining us live from Johor Bahru. Let's start with you, Afifah. A turnout will matter in this Johor election. And where you've been watching these campaigns, what's the mood tell you what's likely to happen on Saturday?
Well, yes, Sue. On paper, we have seen that it is a crowded race. There are over 170 candidates contesting for 56 seats across the state. But the mood on the ground, since I've been observing over the last week or so, the mood has been a lot more subdued compared to the last state elections that was held back in 2022. And that was done amidst COVID restrictions. So we have seen rallies, we have seen walkabouts, the usual manifesto launches. But it really felt like this campaign wasn't driven by one big emotional issues. For many of the voters we spoke to on the ground, the concerns are still very practical issues surrounding the cost of living, higher wages, housing, and whether economic growth is actually translating into improvements in their daily lives. But what really stands out this time round politically is the coalition dynamic, because Barisan Nasional, as we know, is campaigning very much on continuity, on its record in the state government over the last 4 years, and the argument that Johor needs stability to keep investment and development going. But its main rival, Pakatan Harapan, is trying to make the case that Johor should work better with Putrajaya, especially since PH leads the federal government. But this is also where things have become quite complicated, because we know that BN and PH are partners at the federal level, but they are the main rivals here in Johor. Now, of course, there is another major coalition in this race, and that's Perikatan Nasional, which has been trying to present itself as the alternative, especially in Malay majority areas. But it is also dealing with a lot of concerns and questions, whether it's component parties, specifically PAS and Bersatu, whether both of them are fully aligned. So while the campaign may look quiet in terms of voter engagement, in terms of atmosphere and excitement on the ground, beneath all of that, there's a lot that's being tested here. Things like turnout, voter fatigue, and voting based on, local government's issues, party loyalty, or the bigger national picture.
All right, time to bring you in now, Amir. Where you are in Johor Jaya. So what Afifah mentioned, many things being tested. Now, Johor Jaya is held at this, currently the incumbent is the DAP, so that's a partner, it's part of the Pakatan Harapan, but they won very slightly over BN, which Afifah mentioned. So it's just just over 1,922 votes. And what Afifah mentioned, they might be looking to other fronts to contest this time.
Indeed, Johor Jaya is one of the more hotly contested seats in this election, and is one of 12 out of 56 state assembly seats in Johor where the ethnic Chinese form the major majority bloc. So now, Johorians are known to be pragmatic voters. They favour moderate politics. But in this election, we have seen candidates and parties using racial politics to convince the voters. We're seeing, for example, a former councillor from the Barisan Nasional coalition who shared a photo of DAP candidates wearing tudungs or hijab, and also a Parti Bersama Malaysia candidate who brought up the issue of pig farming in Selangor. And these issues are really sensitive in Muslim majority Malaysia. And analysts say that using these issues could backfire on the candidates and parties. All eyes will also be on Pakatan Harapan and whether they can still retain the support among the ethnic minorities in Malaysia, in Johor, especially after a dismal showing in Sabah at the end last year.
So each election strategy is built on what happened in the past. So you mentioned what happened in Sabah. Johor, likely the different parties and coalitions will be learning from that. And after Johor, it will be Negeri Sembilan. Again, very different local politics. And apart from some bread and butter issues, some difference on the ground as well. Could Johor set the tone for what's to come in Negeri Sembilan?
Yes, Wei Shu, Johor is considered a bellwether state in peninsular Malaysia. What happens in Johor usually reflects on the rest of the other state elections in peninsular Malaysia. And that's what Barisan Nasional will be hoping for. They are favourites to retain the Johor state government. And if they do, they're hoping that it generates a blue wave momentum from the south of Peninsula to Negeri Sembilan over the next few weeks. But Negeri Sembilan is a very different proposition for Barisan Nasional, because that's in Negeri Sembilan, Pakatan Harapan is the incumbent government, and Pakatan Harapan is a much stronger base in Negeri Sembilan than in Johor. So besides that, we're also looking at the coalitions who are jockeying for positions. And we have seen ahead of Johor how UMNO, the linchpin party of Barisan Nasional, is hoping for collaboration with the Islamic party, Parti Islam Se-Malaysia. And we're hoping to see whether these dynamics will play a part in the upcoming Negeri Sembilan state election at the end of the month.
Of course, and back to you, Afifah. So whether it's Sabah, Johor, Negeri Sembilan, is all adding up to what has to be held by early 2028, the national elections.
That's right. You know, as Amir had very clearly pointed out, Johor is seen as a bellwether state. So the results here, what happens on polling on 11th July, will be very closely watched. From a national implication standpoint, however, it's still worth noting that this is a state election. And so the result here will not change that balance of power in Putrajaya at this point. Politically, though, Johor matters because it is seen as one of the first major tests in this new election cycle we're seeing here in Malaysia. And, you know, Wei Su, there is this sense of deja vu from that last cycle, because if you remember, after the Sheraton move in 2020, when state governments began dissolving one by one, paving the way for a series of state elections before Malaysia eventually went into the general election back in November 2022. But that situation is very different now, because back then Malaysian politics was still very much defined by the collapse of old alliances, the rise of new blocs, and that question on who could form a stable federal government. But this time round, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim leads the unity government, the Madani government, and that government is made up of parties that are still competing against each other at the state level. So Johor now really becomes a test of how that arrangement works on the ground. So can Barisan Nasional defend its state stronghold while being part of the federal government? Can Pakatan Harapan convince its voters to it remains a credible force outside of its traditional urban base? And just as important, though, we have to look at what voter turnout will look like, because in 2022, the voter turnout in Johor was low, and that really helped to shape the outcome of the state government back then. So how different will it be this time? And all of these issues, they will not matter just for Johor, but also how parties will read voter enthusiasm, mobilization, campaign strategy in the next series of polls, including Negeri Sembilan, Malacca, Sarawak, and ultimately the 16th Malaysia general elections.
Oh, thanks. CNA's Afifah Ariffin there, and Amir Yusof reporting live for us from Johor Bahru.